chassis and interior are now both finished and the body had more than enough time to cure, so now it was time to mask it all off and paint those window rubbers and also some of those aero pieces. To do all the masking I used some KIP tape, but you could also just use some regular Tamiya tape, works just as well and is really good for this sort of stuff. The cutting was done with a super sharp blade. Make sure you have a fresh one so you don't need to apply too much pressure and leave a very small cut behind and not mar the paint or anything like that. So all the surfaces are masked off and prepped and ready for paint. I mixed up the matte black and applied a very small tiny amount, not going too thick, in about 2 or 3 layers, then removed the masking tape to reveal the result. After applying the final coat of paint, I carefully let it dry for about 2 minutes and then started removing the masking tape, not pulling too hard and not pulling straight away at a 90-degree angle from the paint, but more at a 30-degree angle facing the other way that the masking was applied, being very careful not to rip giant areas of the masking off. So with that all done, the headlights needed a bit more detailing, so I just added some flat black in a couple of areas to make it look a bit more custom and give it a bit of a darker look than the standard ones would have. Now, instead of painting the taillight buckets in a silver, I decided to apply a small amount of bare metal foil to give it a super nice and reflective finish. The window wipers were glued onto the window and the window was glued into the body. With most of those details now done to the body, I could put the chassis and interior in, just a click on the front and also a click on the back. Now normally on a Honda S2000 the rear taillights are clear, The buckets are painted in a black, I believe, and some of the lenses in there have a different color, but I don't really like that look somehow, so I painted them with a permanent red marker just on the inside 2 or 3 coats, and then also added a coat of Tamiya clear red on top to make it all nice and even. With that all dried up, it could be glued into place, so I firstly placed those inner housings and inner lenses in, and then glued the red top lens on as well. A small amount of the Bob Smith Industries Super Gold Plus was applied to a toothpick and then carefully applied to some places that would not be visible after I glued the lens in. A small clear bulb was glued into the front headlight buckets, and then the clear parts could be glued onto that as well after I marked the edges with some permanent black marker to simulate a rubber around it. Now in the prepping stage, I drilled a small hole in the side of the body and also in the mirror, and inserted a metal rod in there in order to put them all together after it was all painted. No glue was needed as the hole was really tight after some paint built up in there, and it could all just be friction fit together. And if I want to take it to shows, I can just take those mirrors off and not be afraid that they will break. The aftermarket wheels I decided to use from Aoshima are female fitment, and this model needs some male fitment. Now that will not work together, so I needed to modify it. In the disc brake there could be a hole drilled slightly bigger so that it would fit around the female fitment of the aftermarket Aoshima wheel, and with that all done, I could just glue it in place after I correct the offset. If you decide to do it this way, this also makes it a lot easier to even lower or make the ride height a bit higher. So with that all said and done, I just need to adjust that hole in the disc brake and also need to correct the offset on the female fitment part of that wheel in order to make it fit correctly into the body. So the hole in the disc brake is now big enough. It fits around the hub on the inside of the wheel. I now just need to correct the offset of the wheel itself, and then it can all be glued together and you can choose the desired ride height you want. After going through the comments, I saw that some of you guys suggested that I should go with some bronze colored wheels, and I decided on doing that. And at this moment in time, after gluing that disc brake in, I realized that I made a mistake, as the wheels are still the silver color they came from Aoshima. Now, since the disc brake is already glued in and the rear was already glued on as well, I decided just to keep it this way. It does look good enough, and I really like the overall look with the gray body and those silver wheels. So maybe on another S2000 build in the future, I will go for those bronze wheels, if I don't forget, of course, that is. Now, as you can see just here, I decided not to use the stock S2000 exhaust tips, as they are way too small, and I'm going for a full custom look anyways. So I took out some other photo etch parts that I had laying around from an old 458 build and glued those on.